Hey, what's going on, everybody? Simon here. Welcome to my channel, Hanna Talk. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. For something just a little bit different today, I thought I'd do a video explaining a little bit about how my channel really got started in the first place and just really how this all began. And apologies if it looks like I'm a giant just because of the way my camera is positioned right here on my laptop. So if it looks like I'm a giant, I deeply apologize for that. But I thought I'd do this video just to explain about how this all started, rather than doing it in about 2 or 3 minutes, because it's going to take quite a bit of time to get through this. But just to get to the basic gist of it all, for anyone out there who knows or who doesn't know, I'm primarily a musician and music teacher, hence by the music posters that you see all around my room here. But just like a lot of, like everyone else out there, I grew up as a really big fan of cartoons, animation, pop culture, mostly in the animation cartoon side of things. As a lot of us back as a kid in the 90s, watching Disney Channel, Cartoon Network, Looney Tunes, all those, and Pokemon in particular, with Pokemon being the first anime that I ever got into in the late 90s, early 2000s at that point. So with it being really, really close to my heart. And I think for me, as the years started to go on, and as I was focusing on my music side of things, especially after university, I thought to myself, what can I bring? What do I want to do, or what can I bring to the table, to the pop culture community? Because this was around, to this day now, 10 years ago, since I went to my very first comic convention, which was at Supernova Australia, because I heard about all these comic conventions with all these huge name guests at the time. Which, to get into that a little bit further, I forgot to explain about that before. Sorry about that. But excuse me. Just to get into that, I was really into a lot of the cartoon characters from these cartoons growing up. And it was discovering, years and years later, the people that were responsible for helping to bring those characters to life, particularly the voice actors. And it's like, oh my God, I want to meet these people. And that's why I discovered a lot of the comic conventions that were occurring in Australia at the time, which I'll get to putting a list in and putting it in the description below for anyone who wants to check them out. But the very first one that I went to, which was 10 years ago, which was Supernova. And when I first met for the very first time, Eric Stewart, who most people remember as Brock, and James from Pokemon, Seto Kaiba from Yu-Gi-Oh!, and a whole range of other amazing anime out there, and Veronica Taylor, who most people remember as the original voice of Ash from Pokemon, and for a lot of different anime after that, but Pokemon being the most notable one, though. And it was especially after I did my Bachelor of Music Studies at the time, it was like I was going to myself, okay, what can I do to give back and be part of the pop culture community and put my own sort of mark into that, so to speak. And that's when I discovered a couple of YouTube channels that one of them I was watching at the time when I was doing my uni studies, and one I discovered after that really sort of started all of that up. And I have to give special credit to Emergency Awesome, which I'll put a link to in the description below for the channel, and Michael Edwards, a YouTuber who's a voice actor, interviewer, and podcaster, where I discovered all these guests that he had on his channel, from the likes of Carrie Keranen to Tara Sands to Terry Hawks to Richard Epcar to Lex Lang, a whole range of actors that I immediately recognized them for the roles that they did. And I was like, wow, okay, this is what I want to do right here. So it was really those two channels that kind of inspired me to do that, into starting up posts and reviews on doing based on the stuff that I was into at the time, or really started to get fully into while I was focusing on my music at the same time, on the Marvel, DC, Star Wars side of things, but also on the voice acting and the animation side of things as well. And that's when I started reaching out to my very first guest, which was Peggy O'Neill, who most people remember from Battle Beater Man and from a whole range of projects off the top of my head, particularly as well also the Digimon universe and Ghost in the Shell standalone complex. And from there, it just started a snowball effect where I just started reaching out guest after guest after guest. And here I am 9 years later, and I think 106 interviews? Yeah, about 106, something like that. But 106 interviews later, and still keeping it up to this day forward. And it's been a really amazing journey, just getting to talk to these people, and of course, was really asking the question for myself, and also I know a question that everyone's been asking, why is it that I started this channel in the first place? I started it up for one of three reasons. One, to really give back, be part, and show my support to the pop culture community, to express a side of myself that is not just the musician and music teacher. Like, because it was before I started getting into music and all that, I actually wanted to go into acting, particularly the world of voice acting. And I think the person that really inspired me from that was from my uncle. For any Egyptians out there, for anyone from the Middle Eastern community and everything, is an actor named Lotfi Labib, who is one of the two biggest actors across the whole of Egypt. And I guess you could say I got the acting bug from him on that point. But then I started going down the path of music as I started growing up. Maybe I may decide to go into acting just for another creative outlet, or just really for fun more than anything else, really. Which I'll get into talking about the future of this channel a little bit later on. But yeah, really but going back to the reasons there for a sec, which was obviously being part and supporting and giving back to the pop culture community, expressing a side of myself that is not just the musician and music teacher, but most importantly was to give back, to show my support, and to help bring more notice and attention to the voice acting and the animation industries. These guys do so much for helping to bring these characters that we've grown in love, and especially for myself, being a 90s kid, have grown in love so much from when I first discovered them. And they're amazing at what they do. And I think it's fantastic they're starting to get the notice and a lot more of the recognition they should be getting now. And even though it goes back to a quote I once heard from Katie Lee, who was one of the guests that I had on my channel and famous from a lot of Disney cartoons, where she described, like, not just herself, but to all voice actors just in general, at least the ones that are not like big A-list celebrities that will just get onto there just because they're huge, big names, but the people that actually do this stuff for a living and work their butts off to bring these characters to life and go to the comic conventions and meet the fans and everything, they're famously anonymous. So they're famous to people like myself, or to anyone out there that goes that extra length to know who these actors and characters are. But to the rest of the world, it's like, who are they? And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone is different, or everyone has their own opinion about that kind of stuff. But those are the three reasons that I started this channel in the first place, but really for the third reason, more than anything else. And as for the future of the channel going forward, and actually just to get into that, and so how the Hanna Talk name sort of started coming about was that I was having a discussion with a friend of mine, a musician named Sam Black, where we were talking. When I was telling him about this, he said, "Oh, that's great, man. Like, what do you want to do in terms of the name and everything?" And I started sitting down discussing that a little bit, and he came up with a suggestion of Hanna Time, which is a reference to MC Hammer or Hammer Time. I thought, and I had to think about it for a moment. I was like, that may be a little bit too on the nose, and I think that's going to get me into a bit of legal trouble. And that's when I started putting the words Hanna and Talk together, and just grabbed a microphone that I spotted this picture of a microphone, sorry, excuse me, and just messed about with it a little bit, and just had that logo for the last 9 years, up until this year when I updated it, just recently, thanks to me and my dad working together, for my Oz Comic Con panel, which I did earlier this year, which, if you haven't checked that out, I've posted, obviously, that panel, a little bit of the panel on my Instagram and on my Facebook page, and also a little bit on the community chat as well, for anyone who wants to check that out. So I'll be sure to put links in the description below for all that sort of stuff. And yeah, that's kind of how that came about. And as for how my style started to develop, because this was like an ongoing process from when it started back in 2015 to where I am now, I was really taking a lot of inspiration from from interviewers, particularly like from the late great Michael Parkinson, Australia's own Andrew Denton, and fairly recently from Sean Evans, who many people remember from the Hot Ones videos that he does, for really getting to like ask a lot of the more thought-provoking questions, like really trying to get into asking the questions that not really a lot of interviewers would ask, but also trying to keep it open to people who've never heard of any of these actors as well. Like, obviously asking the question, how'd you get started in acting? What was this particular role like? But also adding a mix of all those things as well. So yeah. So that's kind of how that started to come about. As I said, if you've heard the stuff I did previously before to where it is now, no comparison whatsoever. And as for the Facebook page, as I said, my like Hannah Talk on both the page and my channel has been an ongoing and evolving process where the channel I started to focus way more on the voice acting and animation side of things, like with the interviews I've been doing and stuff. A couple of maybe one interview with like a musician before in the past with Mark Kelso, but for the most part, trying to have that identity attached in on pop culture, like in the voice acting and the animation side of things. But on the Facebook side of things, having the written interviews as well, and also the reviews and post announcements in a written format for like movies, animated shows, comic books, and also big post announcements on anything in the pop culture world, particularly on the world that I'm more familiar with, like Marvel, DC, Star Wars, anime, gaming, that sort of thing. And as for the future of my channel going forward, which I know is the big question, actually going back to a common question that I get asked all the time is, excuse me, was that how is it that I'm able to get in touch with all these actors I've interviewed over the last 9 years? And it's one of two things. It'll be social media or it'll be websites, especially having their own emails attached, or of course with the agencies that they happen to work with. So that's the one or two ways that it goes about. But as for the future of like Hannah Talk in general, whether on the page or the YouTube channel, I'll get into talking about the channel first for that. I'm still keeping the interviews up to this day forward. That certainly has not stopped. But also, as of going forward, I'm going to be posting up some videos on the acting stuff. As I said, I wanted to be like an actor and a voice actor when I was young, and I wanted to get into doing the acting stuff just to express that part of myself. Really just fun more than anything else, really. And but yeah, if James Gunn, Kevin Feige, or Dave Filoni happen to say, hey, this guy would be right for this particular role, that's a bonus. But for the most part, just really for fun more than anything else. And also including a lot of like audio, like almost the exact same as like what the voice actors do with the audiobook stuff. Like where for example, I'll just maybe decide to call that like story time or stories with Simon, where I'll just be like reading off from a particular book that I've read previously, like a comic book or like a straight up novel that I've read, like Alice in Wonderland or The Three Musketeers, and just doing it in that kind of format as well. Again, all that sort of stuff, really just fun more than anything else. And the same thing on the voice acting side with the acting side as well. You'll see what that's going to look like hopefully in the next couple of weeks. And as for my Facebook page, that hasn't changed one little bit. I'm still keeping the reviews up, I'm still keeping the post announcements up, I'm still keeping the interviews up as well, and just getting the announcements out for if I have particular guests on, if I'm going to be talking about a review for a film or a cartoon that I've watched, and that sort of thing. But hopefully that answers all those questions about this channel and gets into a bit of insight into why I started this in the first place. I'd just like to thank you all for your constant support and, getting the feedback that I've been getting from not just the comments on YouTube and just from the reactions I've been getting from the views and from the people watching the videos, like the likes and views, even though I don't really focus on that as much as when I used to back then. But seeing the responses that I've had from some of the interviews that I've had over the years has been absolutely extraordinary. I was surprised myself. I walked into this not really focusing it that much at the time, but seeing the response that I had was just fantastic. And even the response that I've gotten from the guests that I've had over the years has been absolutely incredible. And yeah, it's something that I never took for granted, and I'm extremely thankful to be able to do this and to have the format and the space to be able to do this for you guys and to be able to express that part of myself. But listen, I just like to thank you all so much for your constant support over these last 9 years of my life. And here's to another 9 years and maybe 106 more interviews to go. And a special thank you to every single one of the guests that I've had on this channel for so long, and hope to get you down to Australia one day for a Comic-Con, which, to get into that a little bit, definitely the comic conventions, for at least the ones in Australia that everyone should be concerned about, is there's three big ones that I'll post links to in the description below. Definitely the biggest ones are Supernova, Oz Comic Con, and fairly recently, which is one that only opened just last year, is MetroCon. There's also one that they had in Australia before, but they've now since moved it back to New Zealand. And I think you can only go to New Zealand for this one. Is Armageddon Expo, or what I think used to be AMC Expo, however you want to call it, really. Just to So, for any of the guests out there any of the guests that I've ever had on the channel that want to come to a convention in Australia, those three are the ones to definitely go out for. And for anybody out there that wants to go to a comic convention in the future, and it doesn't matter if you're into anime, gaming, whatever thing you're into with regards to pop culture, it's got something for everybody. So definitely go down to one of those three conventions. I'm not a spokesperson, I'm not a sponsor for any of those conventions. I'm just a fan, and I'm just doing this just to do my bit for the pop culture community and just do my bit for the voice acting and the animation industries. So thank you all so much. God bless you all. This is Simon signing off. Good night, everybody.